G'day everybody, and welcome to welcome to North Sydney Council, and thanks for joining us for this information session on the latest changes to the New South Wales planning portal, planning system. It's one of many innovations that have been rolled out by the state government, and if you're like us, sometimes you're left a bit bewildered. So we put together this presentation. It doesn't claim to be complete, or we don't claim to have complete knowledge of everything that's going on, but we're here to help, and we're trying to pick up as we go. So welcome to the online information session on changes to the DA Lodgment and Processing. The New South Wales Planning Portal and Accelerated Assessments, part of Council's new online information session program. This is one of. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to their ancestors' spirits, past and present. I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal person joining us today. So without much further ado, I'll introduce myself. I'm Gavin McConnell. My current role is Acting Manager of Assessments. My substantial role is Planning Advisor, Executive Planning Advisor. And my colleague George here.
My name's George Johanna, and I'm an Executive Planner here at Council.
Thanks very much. Look, the purpose of today's session is to explain how Council now receives development applications via the Planning Portal. Use of the service became mandatory from July 1st, 2020, and the New South Wales Planning Portal is now the only means of lodging a development application with North Sydney Council, with any council really. The Planning Portal is part of the Department of Planning, Industry and Commerce's e-planning program. Its primary purpose being to drive the digital transformation of the New South Wales planning system. A couple of housekeeping things.
So just to let you all know that the session will be recorded and it will be available afterwards on Council's website. And for all the participants, please be aware that your microphones will be muted throughout the recording session.
There'll be an opportunity to ask questions. We haven't stated that they'll be at the end, but we'd really like to see your questions on the screen as you think of them during the session, so that we can direct our talk towards answering your questions as part of this, shall we say, one-sided conversation. And if you have any comments or wish to engage with Council in any other way, the best way, I think, is the yoursay@northsydney.nsw.gov.au, and Council's communications and media team will be able to respond immediately. And if they need expert inputs from planners such as George and I, they'll seek that in their response. So without much further ado, let's kick off. Sorry folks, we're low tech. See how we go now. So we mentioned the use of the planning portal became mandatory on the 1st of July. You've covered all of this, so yeah, we don't need to touch on to that. We've done that. Just to get you familiar with what you're going to see when you go to the planning portal, this is the page on the Department of Planning's website for the planning portal. And there's menus across the top, obviously with drop-down menus underneath them. So you can find all manner of information there. I won't try and read out everything that's there, but it's just good to familiarize yourself with what's there. Oh, by the way, they have a helpline that we've found being quite useful. At the end of this presentation, the phone number of the helpline will come up. You have to register for the planning portal, and this is for lodging a development application. You have to register, you create an account, and then you need to complete an online application form. So the DA application form from now on is not the North Sydney Council DA application form. we have amended our DA application form to be a checklist to guide you in the information that we're looking for. So that's important, and we ask you to essentially fill that in, tick the boxes to show that you've read and considered it, and or things that are not relevant in your case, and then lodge that in with your application. That will help us understand where you're coming from and more about your application, which will help us in some sort of smooth acceptance of your DA, hopefully. As the screen says, you've got the cost estimate report. The extent of information required depends on the type and complexity of the development proposed. So we've just covered all of that. Point 3. Yes, the last point is we now have a standalone owner's consent form. That is, it's a single sheet. It's not attached to any of the other forms that are on there, but we require the signature of the landowners for a development application to be accepted at North Sydney Council. You'll note that the official New South Wales Planning Portal DA application form only has a ticker box saying that the applicant has sought and received the consent of the landowner. However, in the environment and community that we live in, we feel that additional traditional proof of ownership in the form of a signature and a name is also required. That is the advice we've received. So we'll be requiring the landowner's consent in signature and other details, helping us there. Now, what happens next? Do you want to take the next one? Yeah.
Yep. So once you've completed your application through the portal, all that information is forwarded to council. And so then council will contact the applicant and provide fee information and also any additional form requests. If council doesn't have all the necessary forms and if the fee is not paid within the time frame provided, the application may not be accepted. But once you've got past that stage, the initial review commences and the application is then in council system.
Now, I'll just throw in there that we are learning the process. So there's lumps and bumps in this. It's not a smooth process by any means, but our customer service team still has a role to play. They receive the initial application. They download them when notified by the Department of Planning. They check for the basic quantity of information, not necessarily the quality of information, but they check to see if various things have been submitted. And they're an important first step in this process. They're also able, as the circumstances and their experience allows, they're also able to answer questions. If you are unfamiliar with the DA process or the portal process, and you just want some guidance and the mechanics of lodging a DA, it wouldn't hurt to ask the customer service team, and depending on the question, they may be able to help. So that initial review that George mentioned continues on. Once a DA has been accepted by the customer service team and all things are in place, council has a weekly, every Wednesday typically, meeting of senior assessment staff who review in much more detail. And that's where we may identify information that's missing, that we might seek extra information, in which case it's what we refer to as a stop the clock letter that goes out seeking that additional information. Or if there's something that is fatal to the processing of the application, such as some fundamental piece of information, or the quality is of such a standard that we can't assess the matter, then we might reject the DA. We try not to do that. It's a nuisance for everybody, but it does happen sometimes. So that's the first two vetting stages. The application is then allocated to a town planner for assessment. Now, which applications go through the planning portal? Obviously, DAs we've been talking about, section 4.55 modification applications, review of determination. I think there's still section 8.2.
Yes, section 8.2.
And then we've also got rezoning and planning proposals. That's on the planning side. And then from the more operational construction side, you need to lodge your application for a construction certificate, your CDCs and applications for occupation certificate. All of these need to be applied for through the portal. And I would advise that even if you're using a private certifier, you will need to convey information and make applications to them through the portal. So they act as the council. Their delegated role under legislation is to be the authority that's going to approve or not your application. So you have to go through the portal with them. But obviously, if you've got a private certifier, pick up the phone, talk to them and find out how they're tracking with this new processes.
And importantly, if you make amendments to your DA or your modification application or your review of determination, previously you could lodge that information directly with council, but now all of that information must also go through the portal.
And I would advise this, that I would suggest this, once the application is in council and has been allocated to a planner, that planner is there to be spoken with, and you can talk to each other to find out what is needed. And as everyone's on a bit of a learning curve, talk to them about how they expect to receive the information, and just, like I said, try and work in a collegiate manner while we come to understand the brave new world. So the benefits of this e-lodgement process. Look, feedback that we've received, people tell us straight up that they're saving a lot of time and money in respect of printing paper copies, hard copies. So there's a lot less of that. Printing costs are way down, and the sheer bulk of a lodgement process has been greatly reduced. So that's one bonus.
And then just to add to that, if in the unfortunate circumstance that a DA was rejected, we're not sending back hard copies via the mail.
That's true.
So there's time savings from that as well.
Yeah. Now, what are we looking at here, George?
This is application tracking.
Ah, yes. Council has a process, in line with most councils. We have a DA tracking service. So once you've lodged a DA and it's gotten through the first few days of those preliminary assessments and considerations, you can then track it throughout its life in council. And that's through the development application website, the North Sydney Council website, looking under the DA, the development section. So the process is that you lodge information into the New South Wales Planning Portal website. And that information stays there. That website has a role to play. It's live and everything else. But we also transfer the information to the council website to a large degree. And this is where you can use the DA tracking service to see how your application is going. Now, George, do you want to talk about the challenges?
Yeah, so the flip side to the benefits is that the planning portal is a site it's outside council's control. It's managed by the Department of Planning. And so some of the challenges we're faced with at the moment is that their site doesn't integrate with council software particularly well. So that's been a bit of a challenge for us, and so it creates some administrative burdens on council, but we're working through those to make it work. And so what happens is when applications, your DA, etc., the plans, documents, they're uploaded to the portal in making your application, council then has to download all that information into our system so that it's available for assessment and also for the public to view in assessment tracking. So there's some of the challenges we're faced with in integrating the portal into our system. That's
very relevant. I think also I would add that in this initial period of everybody getting used to the portal. George touched on the fact that the issue of compatibility between software. I would also say that feedback we've received is sometimes one or the other of the websites, council or the state website, is down or has a glitch or is being upgraded or something and is not accessible. So some of the feedback is the frustration of having to deal with two organisations instead of one. This is something I know that the Department of Planning and Council are working on to try and get our systems running smoothly. So it is an area that's not fully resolved at the moment, and we don't resolve from that. It's a fact that this is where we're at. So we've touched on DA tracking. I think we've covered all of this, but let us know if you have any questions about this process.
And my information is that in the future, the planning portal will have something similar to our assessment tracking facility, but at the moment, it doesn't.
Okay, yeah. So that's important to know. Now, submissions, third-party submissions, neighbour submissions, etc. Look, Council prefers to receive a DA and planning proposal submissions electronically via our online DA submission form available on the Council website, on our DA tracking website. But written submissions are also accepted. Those can be emailed to Council, posted or delivered. So during the DA assessment process, there is no loss in your ability to make submissions. It's just a bit smoother if we all get used to doing it electronically. As I said, we have forms available on our website, on the DA tracking website. So yeah, that's one option that we're promoting. We also, and this is important to know with respect of privacy, we release submissions, we put them up on our website, and whatever information is included on that submission is available. We don't edit out addresses or names or contact details, unfortunately, for some, but that's a good public announcement. You should know that whatever you include in a submission about a DA will be available on the website. We have information sheets about submissions and about our privacy policies, etc. So that's a sensitive area for a lot of people, and we urge you to be aware. So, George, what do you know about the?
So the department introduced this program, which is titled the Public Spaces Legacy Program. And so it was to encourage councils to accelerate assessment of DAs. So council's part of this program, which commenced in September last year and runs through to 30 June this year. And the goal of council's improved assessment was a 15% reduction in the median assessment times. So that would bring it down to 61 days as a median assessment time for DAs. And council's currently on track to meet that target. And if council, as we're on track to do, meets that target by 30 June, the department will give council $4.75 million, which will be spent on open space improvement and acquisition. So that's basically that program. And so it has resulted in improvements in efficiencies in DA assessment.
Yeah, and I think that shines a bit of a light on some of the interactions between the state government and local government. It's a carrot and stick approach. The state government, when they seek changes, say to the planning process and the planning technology, planning tools, they can issue an edict and say this shall be done, but they also have tools to motivate and promote certain improvements, certain changes. And this is an example where they are giving an incentive that directly benefits the community. So council's incentive there is to have improved open space in order, in exchange for changing our assessment times, etc. By the way, the median time of 61 days is actually very good across the metropolitan Sydney area. Don't just take my word for it. You can do a little bit of internet research about assessment times, and there's a lot of data available, and we come up pretty well, I think.
I think we do.
So while we finish up, these are some of the key resources. You'll find there the 1300 number, which is the planning portal website. And I'm sorry the blue font isn't very clear, but that's the website. So if you just do a web search for the planning portal and note that information and assistance phone number. And also on the website, there's the guide there to the DA process. If you haven't done it, if you're a small business that's just getting used to it, having a read of those guidelines will be of great assistance. There's also, there's a couple of really useful websites out there I'll just mention. The legislation NSW contains all of the New South Wales legislation, both in its original form and in its current form. It also includes planning instruments and down to local environmental plans for all councils. So it's a one-stop shop for what planning controls are out there. I would also suggest that for broader, more complex issues, have a look at the Land and Environment Court website, do a search there for planning principles. It's absolutely fascinating, some of the things that have been addressed by the Land and Environment Court. I'll just explain quickly. When the Land and Environment Court addresses an issue often enough, they often come up with a clear model, an intellectual model that allows them to assess that particular issue. And when the various justices and other key players in the Land and Environment Court agree on a consistent approach to a given issue, such as view loss or overshadowing or contemporary architecture in a conservation area, any of these issues that they deal with, once they've come up with a consistent way of dealing with it, they write it up as a planning principle, and that then is made available for everybody. So you can see what the Land and Environment Court thinks about complex issues. And I find it's a really good way of structuring an argument for or against a development that you're interested in. So that's worthwhile. There's a lot of really good information on the Department of Fair Trading website. This is more operational, to do with contracts, employment of tradespeople engaging in development and alts and ads and that sort of work. And it touches on the rights and responsibilities of the owner or the tradesperson. So that's good.
Just to add to the planning principles comment, and they do refine them over time, so that if the direction of planning goes in a certain way, they'll refine the planning principles to keep up with that new approach. And,
absolutely.
As you say, those key issues of things like overshadowing, view loss, bulk and scale, development on the periphery of a zone where there's a lower density zone, that sort of thing. It's a very good resource.
It is. One last thing I would say about the planning portal is that there is a general public non-account required page to the planning portal, which allows people to access information, key basic information about any site in New South Wales. There's multiple layers of information that are readily available, and there's a mechanism, once you've identified the site, there's a mechanism to print a report, to prepare a report on that site, which will give you the baseline information of zoning, whether it's heritage affected. There's about 6 or 8 key elements that are pulled forward. So if you're just looking for development sites or looking at a particular site and want to get started on finding out what are the key aspects of the planning regulations around that site, the planning portal property search is a really excellent tool. So that's about it. Anything else, George?
I think we've covered everything, but there may be some questions.
We do look forward to questions either now or in the future. Being pretty low tech, I haven't seen any questions pop up. I will ask our trustee assistant next door to see if I'm missing anything. I'd hate to go past. Excuse me, Gemma. No, doesn't look like it. Oh well. Look, I think that's really about it. And apologies if you've tried to ask a question, you've typed in a question and we haven't seen it, but we can certainly make that information available to you afterwards. Our IT people will be able to do that.
Yeah, we'll respond to those.
We'll respond in the next hour or three. Without much further ado, thanks for attending.
Thank you for your time.